Michael Jordan, 23M Racing, and Farmer Motorsports have officially sued NASCAR for antitrust, and Aric Almirola is pondering potential retirement from NASCAR. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight really quickly. First, going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Conor Moffitt's 2024 Apollo Peck scheme that we'll see next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. The scheme's alright in my opinion. I do like the cause of it. JRM's had some really good looking paint schemes. This one's no exception. It looks pretty good. Definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack next weekend at Charlotte. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2024 Busch Light Camo scheme that we'll see this weekend at Talladega. This scheme looks absolutely fabulous. Kyle Sykes knocked this one out of the park. I like the Busch Light logo. I like the camo. It looks very good. It looks very creative. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack this weekend at Talladega. It looks really awesome, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Talladega Purse money for this weekend. So every time you have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockers puts out the purse money for the event. And according to Bob, for the Cup race, it's $9,222,964. For the Xfinity race, it's $1,337,814. And for the Truck race, it's $880,113. Really surprised the truck purse money isn't up as much. I thought it'd be over $1 million. I thought Xfinity would also be over $2 million. But the Cup purse money is pretty good, all things considered, considering the Cup Series has a charter agreement, which really plays a role in that. It's decent purse money for Cup, but it could definitely be better for Xfinity and for the Truck Series, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Aflac. It was reported by Lyle Toledo and ARCA Star and Parks Colby Evans that Aflac will be sponsoring Johnny Sauter as an associate sponsor this weekend at Talladega. The last time Aflac was in a sport league was back in 2014 when Carl Edwards drove the number 99 car for Roush. They've been out of the sport, I believe, since the 2014 season. So it's really cool to see them coming back into the sport. We all remember the legendary Aflac commercials that Carl Edwards was involved in and other people were involved in as well. I think it's amazing to see him back in the sport, and it's really cool even if it's just a one-off at this point. It's also cool to see Johnny Sauter back this weekend, by the way, but I think it's pretty cool to see that Aflac is getting back involved in the sport and working with NASCAR once again in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Arbys. As it was confirmed by Adam Stern that Arbys will be sponsoring Cody Ware this weekend at Talladega. Arbys is partnering up with Ricker Racing not just for this weekend at Talladega, but also for the NHRA race, which Clay Millican will be driving in the Ricker Racing NHRA Funny Car. I think it's really cool to see Arbys continues to work. They sponsored Josh Ficki at Bristol earlier this year. I don't know if this is a local chain that's sponsoring or if this is like Arbys all across the board, because that was going on with Josh Ficki. But it's pretty cool to see Arbys getting involved in the sport a lot more. They sponsored Matt Kenseth back in the 2000s. They sponsored other drivers at Roush in the mid-2000s. And it's pretty awesome and great to see that Arbys is coming back and they're working with small teams like Ricker Racing. Really exciting stuff, and glad to see that Arbys will be sponsoring Cody Ware this weekend at Talladega. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Ficki. As it was announced yesterday that Josh Ficki will drive the 66 for MBM Motorsports next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. This will be Josh Ficki, I believe, is a 100th career NASCAR Cup Series start overall. He's made a lot of starts in the NASCAR Cup Series over the last 5 to 10 years. And has made a lot of Xfinity Series and some Truck Series starts. Well, it might just be the 100th start in NASCAR altogether. Josh, a pretty solid road course racer, is going to have a chance and opportunity to make the field, especially if more than 40 cars do end up showing up. We'll talk about Trackouts here around that in just a little bit, but I think it's pretty exciting that he's going to get the chance and opportunity. I expect him to be very, very competitive. I think he's going to have a solid chance and opportunity to, for sure, run up front, and not run up front with this team, but I think he'll have a chance to definitely make the field. Hopefully the cars are fast enough for him next weekend, at the Charlotte Roval. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Khloe Chambers. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that Red Bull has signed Khloe Chambers for 2025, meaning that she'll leave Haas after the 2024 season. She also will be affiliated with Ford. She'll be competing in the IMSA Ford GT Series race, I believe, this weekend, and the SRO race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the 8-hour event there. Khloe Chambers, for those who don't know, currently competes in the F1 Academy, where she's been pretty solid this year with Campos Racing and has won a race in the series so far. Red Bull picking her up is a major and massive deal. In recent months, they picked up Conor Zillich. Of course, they'll have an entitlement sponsor with them. And of course, they work with Shane Van Gisbergen as well. And I think it's pretty cool that she'll be part of the Red Bull family going forward. Maybe in the future, we could see her come to NASCAR. That'd be pretty interesting if that happened. But she will be competing, I think, for a Red Bull Academy affiliated team in 2025. And working with Ford is pretty exciting. I think she also would like to get to Formula One in the future, which is probably not going to happen at this point. But she's still young enough where she could have that chance and opportunity in the future. But I think this is really, really exciting for her career, and great to see that she'll get the chance and opportunity to be part of the Red Bull family going forward, starting in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Keelan Harvick. Now, earlier today on social media, Kevin Harvick put out a video of his son, Keelan Harvick, doing a late model test in the Super Late Model Series. I can't remember exactly what track it was at. It might have been a track like Caraway or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But Keelan Harvick obviously is son of Kevin Harvick. We know he's been doing some races in go-karting over the years in Europe, but he's also been competing in some late model races in the car's lower series of the late model tour. And I think considering that he's doing testing right now for the super late models, I'd have to imagine that in the not-so-distant future, Keelan Harvick will be competing in the car's late model tour. Now, Keelan Harvick, keep in mind, I believe just turned 12 years old very, very recently, but it's no secret that Keelan Harvick does have ambitions to potentially come and race in NASCAR. And he will turn 16 years old in the next 2 years. In 2028, he will have the chance and opportunity to compete there. But to get a chance and opportunity running the Cars Late Model Tour, which is becoming kind of development series at this point for NASCAR, it looks like, I think it's pretty exciting to see this, and it's cool that he's going to be fast. I think he is going to be very, very strong and really competitive. I think he'll have a chance to run up front into Super Late Models. He's going to be competing in Bandoleros as of recently. I think we'll see him get a chance and opportunity in the not-so-distant future to run in this series. I think he'll do a great job in the future, and I think in 2025, we may see him in the Cars Late Model Tour in some sort of way and capacity. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Perez. As it was announced earlier today that Brad Perez will drive the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. Brad Perez made select starts throughout the 2024 season, including at Kansas Speedway about a week or so ago, and has been solid on road courses as well. I think he's gotten a couple top 20s in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and some top 20s in the Truck Series as well. And Alpha Prime Racing, while they've been inconsistent at times throughout the year, I've seen this team show flash to brilliance. Brendan Poole's been in the top 20 points all year long, and Ryan Ellis has also been around that top 20 area all season long. I think Brad could have a chance and opportunity to easily make the field. There's probably going to be more than 40 cars that are showing up next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. Obviously, no Cup drivers will be running because they can't run, but I think Brad Perez is going to have a solid chance and opportunity to be very, very competitive in that number 45 car. It's a really decent car, in my opinion. Alpha Prime is looking to build up their program even more going into next year. I think Brad is going to have a solid chance and opportunity. I definitely do think he'll be pretty competitive for sure next weekend at the Roval. Great chance and a great opportunity, and glad to see he'll get the chance to run with Alpha Prime Racing next week, and I think he'll be for sure be pretty competitive with the team at the Charlotte Roval. Really exciting stuff, in my honest opinion, to see him get that chance and opportunity. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Conor Zillich. As it was confirmed yesterday that Conor Zillich will be driving a 7 truck for Spire Motorsports in the Truck Series race later today at Talladega Super Speedway. This will be Conor Zillich's first Super Speedway start, as he's never raced on a Super Speedway in NASCAR's top divisions. We, of course, know Conor Zillich will be running full-time with Junior Motorsports in the 2025 season in the number 88 car. Now, this is going to be very interesting for Conor. He was very successful at Kansas Speedway, finishing inside the top 5, and we know he's a fantastic road course racer as he won in his Xfinity Series debut. But I think this is going to be a very much different challenge for Conor Zillich. He's going to be competing with one of the best Truck Series organizations. He's been a little inconsistent in the few races he's ran with the 7 team. Obviously had the issues at COTA, did get spun out while running in the top 10 at Richmond, and then of course got spun out by his teammate while running in the top 5 at Bristol. I think he's going to have a good chance and opportunity though to win the pole, and it'd be pretty cool for him to get the chance to win in his Truck Series, his 4th start. He would become one of the youngest drivers to win in 2 respective series at this point. I do think he's going to be pretty competitive. I think he'll be super quick and fast, and I think the 7 truck will be up front. We've seen the Spire truck show speed. Nick Sanchez, of course, did win at Daytona earlier this year, which technically is a Spire Motorsports truck. I think he's going to be pretty solid for sure nonetheless, and I think he'll have a great chance and potential opportunity to run up front, and I think that 7 truck has got the speed. Kyle Busch has won a Super race earlier this year in that 7 truck in Atlanta. I think Conor will be pretty quick and pretty solid for sure this weekend at Talladega Super Speedway. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rockingham Speedway. As it was reported by Bozy Tatarevic, who does a lot of stuff in IMSA and does some work in NASCAR as well, he confirmed yesterday that Rockingham Speedway will be having a test for the NASCAR Xfinity Series on November 13th, which will be a tire test. It is not known at this point who will be part of this tire test. I'd have to imagine it may not just be 3 drivers. Have to imagine it's going to be a lot of drivers who will be part of this tire test. I am really hoping that we do get to see this live stream. Now, why are they doing a tire test at Rockingham? Well, remember, for 2025, for the first time since 2004, the NASCAR Xfinity Series will be racing at Rockingham Speedway with the Truck Series, which will have their first race since 2013. The last driver to win, of course, that track was Kyle Larson. There were rumors about ARCA coming in, but ARCA, of course, will not be competing in that same weekend in 2025. But I think it's so exciting that Rockingham is going to be coming back in the 2025 year. The track is going to be abrasive, and you need tires to show that abrasiveness because it could create a lot of that character. They've done repays at the track. They've done a lot of upgrades to the facility. And I think it's amazing and great to see that Rockingham will be coming back in 2025. And again, they want to do this tire test to kind of figure out what kind of tires are they going to need and what tires they should probably use this weekend. I think it's so just not this weekend, but next year when we race during Easter weekend. The Cup Series will not be racing at Rockingham, which is a little disappointing, but I have to imagine 2026 that could be a potential possibility. But I think it's really cool to see this. Maybe we'll see Martin Truex Jr., who will be running some select race with JGR next year once that gets officially announced. He'll be racing that Rockingham race for sure. Maybe some other drivers moving up next year. That could certainly be a possibility. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. But I think it's pretty awesome and great to see that Rockingham will have a tire test. I think it's a major and massive story overall, and great to see there's going to be a tire test. I'm looking forward to it, and I really hope and pray that NASCAR does go ahead and decides to live stream it. In my honest opinion, I think it would be cool for them to live stream it. Kind of did what they did the Next Gen test. I'd like to see them do that here later this year on November 13th, which is my dad's birthday, by the way. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Danny Effin. As it was announced yesterday that Danny Effin will be the crew chief for Harrison Burton at AM Racing in 2025. Danny Effin, for those who do not know and are not aware, was a former driver driving for teams like JD Motorsports and drove for some smaller organizations back in the late 2000s to the early 2010s. Danny Effin, I think, also has had some crew chiefing experience in the past as well. So that expertise, I think, is really going to help Harrison Burton. Having someone that's kind of a little bit of a big name, no, not a massive name overall, but someone that's kind of unknown come in and work with Harrison Burton is definitely going to be very, very interesting. Obviously, Harrison Burton will join AM Racing in the 2025 season. And I think that having someone like Danny Effin, who has some crew chiefing experience, is going to be very interesting. And they're bringing someone in, like I said, who does have some experience. I expect this pairing to be decent next year. And I know that Ford is putting a lot more work into AM Racing going into next year. Look, AM Racing, we know it's no secret, they struggled in 2024. They fired Hailie Deegan halfway through the year at the Chicago Street Course weekend. They've had drivers like Joey Logano and Josh Berry, and drivers, of course, like Dylan Lupton, who's going to drive the final 6 races this year. And, of course, Lawless Allen's made a few starts. And for the most part this year, this organization is struggling. Having a stability with a driver like Harrison Burton, while he's not much better than Hailie Deegan, he does have some wins in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He won 4 times in 2020 and was solid in select starts in 2019 and was solid also in 2021, though he did not go to victory lane. And I think Harrison definitely will be better in 2025, and I think we'll have a chance and opportunity to contend for top 20 in the standings. If they can bring the competent equipment, having someone with that experience who's driven race cars and knows how to work on race cars come in and work with you, I think that definitely is really going to help this organization as a whole going into 2025. So I really hope Danny Effin can bring a lot to the table to really help the organization, because I think everyone would be happy to see this organization succeed, because I know there was talk about a team shutting down at one point. I really hope that Danny Effin, though, can come in there and correct a lot of issues and a lot of problems and set this team up for a lot of success and not a lot of failure going into the 2025 NASCAR Xfinity season. Hoping you can have a really good year, that being Danny Effin and Harrison Burton in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Ficki. As it was officially confirmed earlier today that Josh Ficki will be doing double duty this weekend, as he'll be driving the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. We've already talked about the fact he'll be driving the 66 car for NBM Motorsports as well, but he'll be driving in one of the top cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, Josh has already made a start with this organization earlier this year at Portland and was very, very competitive. He actually was running inside the top 5 majority of the day, and at one point got up to second or third in the race. Unfortunately, got caught up in a couple incidents and wrecks at the end of the day. And I said it back then as well. I really hope Josh Ficki would get the chance and opportunity in a really good car. I think Ficki honestly has a chance and opportunity to go to win. Now, obviously, he's going to have to deal with drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen, and I think SVG's got a major advantage going into the race. AJ Allmendinger, who's won the last 3 or 4 straight Roval race there, including the Cup Series race last year. I think he's got a good chance and opportunity to win the Cup race as well. He'll be dealing with drivers like Sam Mayer, who won the Charlotte Roval last year. I think he's going to have a lot of major competition going into the event. But I think he definitely will be a top 5 threat. And I think he could have a chance and opportunity to win if drivers like SVG and AJ Allmendinger end up running into issues and problems. I could definitely see Josh Ficki getting a potential win. But if he does really well, this could lead to a lot of great opportunities for 2025. We don't know what Josh Ficki's plans are going into 2025. But we could see one of the JGR cars come back, and let's just say that if he's very, very successful and can run up front, I could see this leading to him getting a really good chance and opportunity to go back to JGR next year. Though JGR is expected to announce their plans in the not-so-distant future, which we'll get to here in just a little bit. But I think that Josh Ficki is a great pickup for Joe Gibbs Racing. They've had drivers like a couple of really big names like Justin Bonzagnor coming in this year. They, of course, have had Ty Gibbs make select starts, and they're going to have other drivers come in as well in the future, get that chance and opportunity. So I'm really excited about this nonetheless, and I think that Josh Ficki is going to do a pretty solid and great job. This is an amazing opportunity for Josh, and I do think he will be very competitive and will be pretty solid for sure. Next weekend at the Roval, I expect him to be pretty fast and pretty quick for sure next weekend at the Charlotte Roval. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing. Now, it was originally reported by Joseph Straley from TobyChristie.com that Trackhouse Racing will have an announcement on, I believe, Saturday or Sunday, October the 6th. Now, earlier tonight, they put out a teaser which will come out on Sunday, October 6th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right before the NASCAR Cup Series race takes place. They will basically be announcing something major. Now, earlier tonight, in a video that they released, they teased Conor Zillich and Shane Van Gisbergen both in the same video. There's been a couple of videos throughout this week where Conor Zillich has been involved. Now, Conor Zillich obviously is a Trackhouse development driver, while Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, will be running full-time with their team in 2025. So what is this big announcement that Trackhouse Racing is going to have? I think there's definitely a couple possibilities. Number one, and this is the most likely possibility, is that they are going to be announcing Shane Van Gisbergen sponsors for 2025. A lot of people do believe that WeatherTech is going to be the major sponsor that he will have for 2025, considering they sponsor Shane for a majority of races throughout the 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series season, and they are sponsoring both the Xfinity Series race and the Cup Series race this weekend when he does drive the number 16 car. So I think that could definitely be a possibility, and maybe they're also revealing Conor Zillich as sponsors for 2025 as well. Maybe this could be a Red Bull partnership. We know that Red Bull is working with SVG for many, many years. He does entitlement work with them. It'd be really cool to see maybe a Red Bull car come out as well. Another possibility, and I've seen some people throw out this theory, they could be announcing Conor Zillich is making his NASCAR Cup Series debut, maybe at the Charlotte Roval. We know that Justin Marks has been teasing a possible return to Project 91 for 2025, and a lot of people have been wanting Conor to already make his NASCAR Cup Series debut very, very early. And I think Conor Zillich making his Cup debut at the Roval would definitely be a very interesting move, and move that I definitely would love to see. Conor Zillich is extremely talented. Like I've already talked about him in the Truck Series part. Conor has already won an Xfinity Series race this year at Watkins Glen, and he finished in the top 5 at Kansas and is making a few more starts later this year. I think he's running at Homestead near the end of the year, and I think he's got Martinsville, Phoenix scheduled for the end of this year in that number 88 car before he officially goes full-time in 2025. I think him getting an opportunity with Project 91 would be absolutely phenomenal and absolutely incredible at the same time as well. I would not go into the race thinking he could win. If he would win in his Cup Series debut, that would be insane. But I think in the next 2 years, you're going to see Conor Zillich go full-time, which means Daniel Suarez better be watching his back going into 2026, because I do think his future will definitely be in question if Conor Zillich, let's say, does get the opportunity to make his Cup debut, and he's extremely successful in his first start. I think he will finish top 15 or top 20 if that's what it is. But most likely it will be the announcement of the sponsors, which I think that's what will be officially announced, which I think is really phenomenal to see. I think WeatherTech is going to be a majority sponsor. I think we'll see Safety Culture come into play next year, and a couple other companies I think will be working with Shane Van Gisbergen in the 2025 NASCAR Cup season, maybe also announcing some select starts for him for 2025 in Xfinity as well, maybe with Junior Motorsports. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're doing a little bit of a silly season checkup. Earlier this week, there were a couple pretty big major silly season announcements surrounding the 2025 NASCAR Xfinity Series and the Truck Series seasons. The first big announcement that was announced a couple days ago is that Carson Quaffle will be joining the NASCAR Xfinity Series full-time in 2025, driving the number 1 car for Junior Motorsports. Bastard Shots will sponsor him for 23 races of the 33 or 34 Xfinity Series races for 2025. He'll take over the 1 car for Sam Mayer, as Sam Mayer, of course, will move over to the Haas factory team in 2025. I think Carson Quaffle is an extremely very talented race car driver. He's been super impressive in his select starts. In his first 2 Xfinity starts, he finished inside the top 5 in the number 88 car and was right in position in his second start to win against Ryan Truex, who beat him on the final restart after some contact and some cautions near the end of the event. Carson has been super impressive this year. He's been a little bit hit or miss on the bigger ovals this year, but on the shorter ovals this year, he's been exceptional and impressive. It's unknown who his crew chief is going to be. My theory is Andy Overstreet is the most likely person who will be the crew chief for him in 2025. But this is one of the most complete Junior Motorsports lineups going into next year. You've obviously got Carson Quaffle going full-time. You, of course, got Sammy Smith driving the number 8 or the number 9 car. You've got Justin Allgaier in the number 7 and Conor Zillich in the 88. I would not be shocked or surprised if one of these 4 drivers, including Sammy Smith, ends up winning the championship. JRM has not won the title since 2018 when Tyler Reddick won the championship. I think this is the best chance they've had in a very long time, and I would also not be surprised if 3 of these 4 drivers end up making the championship for next year. Most likely Justin Allgaier, Conor Zillich, and Carson Quaffle. I think you got a really complete lineup going into this year, and I think it's really, really exciting. Moving back down to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, it was confirmed also on Tuesday that Caden Huntington will be driving full-time in the Truck Series next year in the number 45 truck for Nice Motorsports. He's been exceptionally impressive in the Truck Series this year. Caden, of course, has now won a race this year, but he probably should have a win with how fast he's been. Him and Phil Gold have worked together very, very well. Speaking of Phil Gold is expected to be the crew chief for him also in 2025. I think Caden Huntington will make the playoffs next year with the pace and speed he's shown this year, and especially with the Truck Series field getting a little weaker. No offense to a lot of the drivers like Corey Hyman, those guys who will be back in the Truck Series most likely. I think this is going to be a very strong year going into the season for Caden Huntington. I think he's going to be very, very fast. And finally, let's talk about Hailie Deegan. Hailie Deegan confirmed this week that she will be racing in Formula 4, I believe, at Circuit of the Americas. She'll be competing in the Indy stuff. There's been rumors about her maybe going over to Indy Lights or going to the IndyCar side of things going forward. It's unknown what her plans are for NASCAR going into the future. I do think she could have a chance maybe in the not-so-distant future to come back to NASCAR, but I think her focus is going to open wheel, which there's nothing wrong with that. And she can be successful in open wheel. I think that's going to be good for everybody. But when you look at the rookie class for the Xfinity Series next year, especially as well, you've got a really strong rookie class. Carson Quaffle, Conor Zillich, Daniel Dye, Christian Eckes, Nick Sanchez. You think about the other two guys potentially coming up of William Sawalich and Taylor Gray have been rumored to be moving over to Joe Gibbs Racing the Xfinity Series. You've got drivers like Harrison Burton moving down. Chandler Swift, we don't know what he's doing yet for 2025. It's rumored he's not going to be back with the team next year and might be moving to another organization that we don't know at this point. But I think the Xfinity Series set up Haas Factory with Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed. That's going to be a strong pairing. You, of course, have some other drivers like Brandon Jones moving back to JGR. In general, the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series are pretty much set for net. Well, Truck's still got a long way to go on their silly season side of things, but I think when you look at Carson Qualification and Honeycutt in their respective rides, I think it's a big win for the short track drivers, and I think it's pretty cool to see that both those drivers will be full-time in the respective rides in the 2025 NASCAR season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories of today's episode as we're talking about Aric Almirola. Now, Aric Almirola has been, of course, running part-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. I talked a little bit about this on the channel about Aric Almirola's future for 2025. Well, earlier today, Dustin Albino from jski.com and NASCAR.com as well wrote a very interesting article surrounding Aric Almirola. And according to what Dustin Albino has reported, he reports that Aric Almirola's future is currently unknown right now at this moment for 2025. And in fact, if you look at the title of the article, Aric Almirola is pondering potential retirement. Now, there is a chance that Aric Almirola could maybe come back in 2025, but I also think there's a chance he could retire at the end of this year. Aric Almirola in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year has been extremely solid. He just picked up his second win of the 2024 Xfinity year and his fifth career NASCAR Xfinity Series win this past weekend at Kansas Speedway. And you look at other races throughout the year for Aric Almirola. Aric Almirola has been super quick. He could have won at Richmond. He had one of the fastest cars there, but Chandler Smith beat him at the end of the day. He was very close to winning Indianapolis back in July. But you also do have to remember that Aric Almirola was supposed to run a ton of races in the middle portion of the year. Remember, he got into a fight in a Toyota meeting, a competition meeting, between him and Bubba Wallace. Now, a lot of people, Joe Gibbs Racing suspended him because of the fact that they felt like that Aric Almirola was the one who was the instigator and was the one who started it, considering the fact that Almirola and Bubba have had a history and a tendency to go after each other over the years. We don't really know much of the details other than the fact they got into a little bit of a shoving match, basically in a Toyota meeting, and that came out, and that's why Aric Almirola was suspended for a very long time. And the big question a lot of people are probably wondering, will Aric Almirola officially retire at the end of this year? To be honest, I really don't know. I kind of would like to see Aric Almirola come back and maybe run full-time in Xfinity with Joe Gibbs Racing next year. If you put him in a JGR car full-time in 2025, I think it realistically would have a chance and opportunity to win the championship. The problem is that's probably not what's going to be happening for 2025. I already mentioned it in this episode. It is heavily rumored right now that William Sawalich and Taylor Gray are taking the two other full-time entries. I've also wanted Ryan Truex go full-time. That's not happening next year unless he can bring a much bigger budget and JGR decides to run 5 cars. Now, granted, they could run 5 cars because you don't have the limits in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. You do in the NASCAR Cup Series. But I think Aric Almirola will probably not run full-time next year. I think there's a good chance he does retire. Look, Aric's had a really solid career. He's won 3 NASCAR Cup Series races, 2 of them coming from Stewart-Haas Racing, one once with Richard Petty Motorsports team, the Bubba Wallace eventually ended up driving for, and he had a solid career at Stewart-Haas Racing. And going back to JGR and finishing the year as well, I think he's got a good chance and opportunity to also win some races before the end of the year. When we go back to Martinsville, I think he's going to be very competitive. That 20 car and the short track program especially has been pretty good. And we also have to remember, he's a pretty good super speed racer. He can go into this weekend and end up winning, which would not shock me and surprise me in the slightest. He's a very good super speed racer who has shown a lot of stuff. Now, is Aric Almirola Hall of Famer? Absolutely not. But Aric Almirola is a driver who's going to bring the equipment home for you most of the time and do a pretty good job. We all thought Aric Almirola was completely done at the end of this year. Now, if he does come back in 2025 and decides to not retire at the end of the year, maybe pull Carl Edwards, for example, I think he runs less races. I think he'll probably run around 5 to 6, considering the fact that next year there's only going to be one All-Star car for Joe Gibbs Racing. You're going to have Mark Truex Jr. running part-time next year, probably. Ryan Truex also. Ty Gibbs probably. Maybe he can run around 5 to 10 races and do a similar schedule to this year. And if he is back next year with JGR or with another organization, I think it will be a winning contender. But again, I also think there's a really great chance and a very strong possibility that 2024 is going to be the final year. I really hope it's not the end for Aric Almirola. I really would like to see him come back and run in 2025 and also get a chance to run part-time in the Cup Series, maybe with 2311, who we'll be talking about here in just a short little bit. But I think Aric Almirola, definitely, like I said, there is a chance and possibility that this could be his final year. And if truly this is the last year for Aric Almirola, it is going to be disappointing. But at the same token and same time, it would also not be the most shocking thing in the world. So we'll see what happens in regards to Aric Almirola's future. But there is a chance that this could be the final season for Aric Almirola in the NASCAR series overall. He will be 41 next year, and he's probably going to want to spend time with his family a lot more, which I definitely respect that. So if he does come back, it'll be part-time. But there's a great chance and possibility that 2024 will be the final year for Aric Almirola in NASCAR as a whole. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Michael Jordan, 2311 Racing, and Front Row Motorsports. We already talked about this on the channel and did a little bit on the details, and we didn't get all the details out. But it was announced on Wednesday morning that all three of these entities are suing NASCAR. They have filed an antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR. Then their opening statement, they called NASCAR monopolistic bullies. They said that NASCAR is quintessentially running like a monopoly. The France family has ran the sport the same for many, many years. What 2311 Racing, Michael Jordan, and Front Row Motorsports want, they will be competitive and they want to be competitive. But their ultimate goal is to bring more money to the teams and organizations. They also want to have a little of governments in the sport, and they wanted the charters to become permanent. A backstory on the situation. About a couple weeks ago, most organizations, 13 of the 15, had signed the charter agreement. Teams like Hendrick Motorsports, teams, of course, like the Haas Factory Team, Joe Gibbs Racing, other organizations like Trackhouse Racing, for example, and RFK, they signed the charter agreement. RFK is also expected to expand to 3-car operation with Ryan Preece next year. But you had two organizations that did not sign the charter agreement, and there's 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. Continuing on with this, there is a big part of this that could help the teams in a big way. This is a way that they could end up getting leverage. They have brought Jeffrey Kessler in. Now, for those who do not know who Jeffrey Kessler is the biggest antitrust lawyer in the country. He helped in the NCAA help college athletes get paid with the NIL. He is a big instrumentation for the NBA free agency and the NFL free agency. And he also helped the U.S. women's soccer team get out there for equal pay. When he's getting involved in this, he usually doesn't get involved in stuff that he doesn't feel like he could win. He's been on a lot of radio shows and a lot of shows this week discussing what the plan is. He said this week to all the NASCAR media members and people that were in the press conference. He said of all the things he's been involved in when it comes to this kind of stuff like antitrust lawsuits, he said that this is the most egregious one he has ever seen. Now, continuing on with this, and we'll talk a little more about the lawsuit. It was confirmed this week that 2311 Racing and Front Row will have a third charter for next year. We knew Front Row was going to have 3 cars going into the 2025 season, but it was also confirmed that 2311 Racing has purchased a charter from Stewart-Haas Racing pending approval from NASCAR. Now, a big question a lot of people are going to have is, will 2311 Racing and Front Row, will they be racing in 2025? They have filed an injunction to NASCAR where while this lawsuit and legal case is going on, they are planning to race in 2025. So people, fans of drivers like Bubba Wallace, Kurt Busch, for example, Tyler Reddick, Zane Smith, who could be headed over to Front Row next year, and of course, Noah Gragson and Todd Gillen, you don't have to worry, they'll be on the racetrack. Now, they're trying to get an injunction so they can have a charter during the legal system, but we'll see if they get approved. Now, they probably will still end up being an open team next year. Also going to 2311, they, like I said, will have a third charter next year, and the driver likely getting that third seat is Riley Herbst, and I think that will be announced in the not-so-distant future. Now, looking at the lawsuit itself, there was a lot of majorly eye-opening things and a lot of red flags going against NASCAR. They brought up the 1969 boycott, when a lot of teams boycotted at Talladega Superspeedway, where all teams boycotted except 3 drivers who ran full-time. Jim Vandiver, Richard Brickhouse, who won the race. So there has a lot of controversy, and Bobby Isaac did end up racing, but a lot of drivers boycotted. They brought up a lot of things. Like I mentioned, they called the NASCAR monopolistic bullies. And when you have Curtis Polk and Michael Jordan involved, this is serious. And for people saying that Michael Jordan and Curtis Polk don't have a chance and opportunity to win, if they do take NASCAR to court, I think you're wrong. I think they actually have a really big chance. When you got Jeffrey Kessler getting involved in your legal situation and in your legal case, you got as much of a chance and opportunity as the next big person. Continuing on, they brought up a lot of major things. They talked about the purchase of ARCA. Remember, back in 2017 or 2018, NASCAR acquired ARCA. They also brought up IMSA. IMSA is owned by Jim France, and it's owned by NASCAR. And they also brought up the fact that the next-gen car and the IP of the next-gen car is also owned by NASCAR, where the teams have to go to NASCAR if they want to go ahead and purchase a lot of parts. And looking at this, they basically have to get it approved by NASCAR if they want to get repairs. They also brought up the process from the final night. According to this lawsuit, it was stated that the teams originally were only given 1 hour on the Friday night before the weekend at Darlington or Atlanta Motor Speedway. And they had 1 hour at the time to sign the charter agreement before NASCAR was going to revoke it. Now, after the teams felt like that this is stupid, NASCAR decided to go ahead and extend it 6 hours and told the majority teams need to sign it. Otherwise, we are going to revoke your charters. Again, the teams are expected to get more money, but Curtis Polk brought this up during the press conference yesterday. He brought up the fact that only 13% of the revenue is going to the teams, and they make about $3 million. And I think that this, like I said, will have major ramifications for the sport, regardless of what ends up happening. But continuing on, one thing that also really concerned me, and why I'm rooting for the teams a lot more now than I originally was, is the fact that NASCAR wants controls of the team's IPs and the likeness of the driver. So they're wanting to get into the driver's private lives, among other things. And personally, I do not agree with that. That is a bad move, and that is a bad call for NASCAR to get involved with that. It's also no secret that originally NASCAR wanted to be able to be involved in the purchase of charters. So they wanted to basically close it off, not let anybody else come in. Speaking of that for a second, continuing on, you can't compete in any other stock car series, like the Cars Tour, for example. In addition to that, they're not going to allow any other teams, like 23XI, for example, to go and race in another series like IndyCar. They're not allowed to do that. And they can't race at their own tracks because NASCAR owns the tracks. NASCAR bought ISC about 6 or 7 years ago and took control of that. This is kind of sad, in my opinion, that NASCAR doesn't want drivers and teams to go compete. Now, drivers, I believe, are still allowed, according to this new charter agreement, they are allowed to go ahead and do this where they can go race. But teams like 23XI, for example, could not go form an IndyCar team, which I find to be a little stupid if you ask me. And this could also hurt the possibility of teams like Chip Ganassi Racing and Andretti Global, who's been rumored to be coming back to NASCAR, coming into NASCAR like they were in the early 2010s. They've been rumored to be looking to come in. Could also hurt a team like Junior Motorsports, who has a Cars Tour team at this point. That could hurt them getting into NASCAR, and they wouldn't be approved of getting a charter. Looking at the situation head on, like I said, do the teams have a chance at winning this lawsuit if they go to court? Yes, I think they absolutely do. If it's the Anti-Sherman Trust Act that's coming into play, they absolutely do have a chance. Now, personally, I think that this could get settled. There is a chance that this could get settled, but Jeffrey Kessler did say today or yesterday that basically they need to have major changes coming where teams are going to have more governments and more decisions. They want to be able to win this, and they want to be able to change the sport for the better. Personally, if you want my opinion, I originally was kind of neutral on this. I couldn't decide to be on the NASCAR side or the team side, but I'm really hoping the teams can be successful. Now, I also do want to make it clear as well, when it comes to this, I don't agree with a lot of the people like Larry McReynolds with what they said. I also don't agree with how things have been handled with Sirius XM. We all saw that today, by the way. That has been very concerning. And Ryan McGee's article he released, I would not suggest looking at the title of it, but it's an absolutely horrendous article that came out around this situation. I just don't agree with how he kind of wrote that article up. Continuing on, though, with this, my thing I just want is everybody to get along and everything to be settled. I want the teams to be successful, but I don't want them having full control of the sport. but also NASCAR has way too much control. I want both parties to be able to work together, because if both parties are working together, it will be very healthy for the sport, and it will help the sport in major and massive ways. This is also one of the biggest stories of 2024. One of the biggest stories, I think, in NASCAR in the last decade or so. You have Michael Jordan, who's one of the most influential figures in sports, sending out a lawsuit against NASCAR. This is going to have major ramifications in major ways going forward, and I think this story is just beginning. I think you're going to see a lot more stuff come out around this lawsuit going forward. You're probably going to see Denny Hamlin and people from Front Row discuss this week with the media, and I expect in the press pass, when I think they're going to be on the press pass, and I'm not mistaken, you're going to hear some more of this coming out. So expect a lot more drama to come out around this. I think it's going to be very chaotic. I think it's kind of wild to see we got this point, and I do think there's a chance it does go to court, but I really hope it can get settled soon, but I don't think it's going to be settled anytime soon. And I think a lot of chaos will be coming from this in the not-so-distant future. So, that is good for today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Listeners and below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. You think that the teams have a chance to win the lawsuit? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think Aric Almirola does end up retiring? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, see the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race view from Talladega Super Speedway. Then tomorrow on the channel, you're going to see this reactions to NASCAR Cup qualifying from Talladega, the Xfinity review and SVG video. Sunday, the SVG announcement, we might talk about that on the channel. And we also have the Cup review and a Shane Van Gisbergen video once again. So we got a lot of great content dropping that I can't wait for you guys to check out. So we'll talk about drivers above Walsh, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, you name it, this weekend in the race. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.